briefly introduce Dirk. He is professor at HDA and ETH in Zurich, and he is not in the computer science business. He is from humanities, social, and political science. And I think it's very good to have an expert from the outside of the computer science to shed light on what we are discussing. So, Dirk, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. Actually, I have a physics background. So I come from the natural sciences. I've gone through engineering sciences, and now I'm in the social science. My talk is about sustainability, digitization, and planetary health, and how to avoid a dystopian future. We are all aware that the main problem of our world is lack of sustainability. I don't have to repeat that. And for this reason, also, we have those sustainability development goals or Agenda 2030. And there's also perhaps a less known agenda, which is called the Planetary Health Agenda, which is also relevant to the same subjects. The question is basically how to implement those agendas. And in fact, there has been some interest, for example, of the World Economic Forum. They have created a global cybersecurity center that collects a lot of data that can be used for all sorts of things. And there's also a collaboration agreement with the United Nations. And that is towards implementation of the Agenda 2030 and also the Planetary Health Agenda. It's about digital cooperation and many other goals that they want to pursue. That sounds all very nice, but how to make use of this data if we wanted to? And a lot of talking has been about a surveillance-based, data-driven, AI-controlled approach. So basically, the idea of some people is let's collect as much data as possible about this world to get as accurate as possible picture of everything, then feed that into a huge AI system that would learn the patterns and how to run the world. Ideally, it would be super intelligent, so basically figure out better solutions than humans could do, would perhaps be able to figure out the best possible evolution of planet Earth, nature and humanity, and then implement this plan. But that would interfere largely with freedoms and human rights. And in fact, some of these implementations in the sense of a data-driven society has been on the way and controversially discussed. We all know that from the NSA revelations of Edward Snowden and the related scandals. And in fact, the idea to create a digital twin of the world is pretty old. Since many years, there's work on this by the US military and Fortune 500 companies, and one of those systems is called Sentient World. And is actually collecting data not only about the surface of planet Earth and also ecosystems, but about people, each individual person, and those digital twins of every person are really individualized with highly detailed surveillance data, as far as I know. And then the question is, how useful would that be, and how to basically make a contribution to a better world, hopefully. And some people have brought into the play of war room approach. So basically all the data would come together in a huge data center, and their strategic decisions would be taken about the world and implemented. So the question comes up, would our civilization be replaced by a militarization? And I've addressed this in a couple of talks, in particular a TEDx talk recently, And I think we need to discuss this because I believe there are a lot of issues over here. I get quite concerned when people say that our world needs to be disrupted in order to implement change. And if people start to talk about that we would have to learn to die in the Anthropocene, and then suddenly there's a lot of talking about ethical dilemmas and trolley problems and triage, and that is highly concerning because it's really about life and death of many people. And I'd like to raise the question, is it really a trolley problem? Or isn't it more a logistic and coordination problem, also a problem of fairness? And therefore, I have to point out that digital twins need ethics and quality standards. And probably altogether, we need a new approach. In particular, we need to take complexity science on board. I've been involved in a paper that is in a preprint stage about complexity science for digital twins. We are pointing out over there that digital twin approach, that means a purely surveillance and data-driven approach is not enough and would be a too materialistic approach in a sense. The usual digital twin approach tends to overemphasize the components and to oversimplify a complex system. And this can cause data-driven governance and planning to fall short. Systemic failures could result. And in particular, the volta is not a zero-sum game. These are just a few words of warning. And I'd like to point out some of the interesting learnings that we've had in the area of complex systems. One of those areas is about, for example, managing traffic. Traffic is one of the contributors to CO2 and also to other emissions that one would like to reduce. It turns out that a new approach in which the traffic flow is controlled with traffic lights rather than the other way around, a self-organized control approach, is actually superior to the classical approach of running a city from a control room. And this is quite interesting and typical for many complex systems. There's also computational complexity in figuring out potentially optimal solutions. So that can often not be done in real time. As you can see over here, all the traffic participants can benefit from this approach. So as newspapers have wrote, there's more green for all traffic participants and also more green in the sense of a better footprint on nature. So basically, not only humans would benefit, but nature as well from this new self-control approach. And that can be generalized to other complex systems, in particular our economy. And therefore, I'd like to introduce a concept that we've been working on for some time that we call Finance 4. And this is about participatory sustainability. We all know that we need to turn wasteful supply chains into a circular economy where we reuse resources. But the question is how? And all attempts of regulation, perhaps over-regulation, have not been extremely effective. But we can actually learn from nature, because nature has figured out the problem. Nature is already a circular system, and so we can take a bio-inspired approach. And there is a new way of combining synergy in cybernetics, which doesn't lead to the control room-based cybersyn approach, but to synergetics. That means the science of self-organization and symbiosis. And we can now build this. using the Internet of Things, but in a participatory way. I've been working on this concept for some time. A few years back, we've called that the NervousNet project. And it has been proposed by the Future ICT project and its follow-up project, Future ICT 2.0. And so the idea is to map noise, CO2, and other externalities of human activities, production, consumption, and create feedbacks, multiple feedbacks. And these feedbacks can be created by multiple currencies that could be connected to measurement procedures using the Internet of Things.
Dirk, may I just say that I'm looking at the watch again? So
I'm coming to an end shortly. So doing this would introduce new forces into our economy that would drive a co-evolutionary process towards a circular and sharing economy. And so basically, the approach of, can you please unmute?
Some noise.
Moderator of the session can stop this, okay? Okay, so the approach is basically that of participatory resilience, where we reach progress by participatory innovation and by co-evolution. And this is very much in line with the idea and concept of digital democracy, where we would empower civil society by digital means, and combine competition with cooperation, for example, in formats such as City Olympics that would have different disciplines to improve climate, energy use, sustainability, and resilience. Doing that based on a new model of globalization that we call localization, based on thinking global, but acting local and diverse, experimenting, learning from each other, and helping each other. And in fact, we've run a little Climate City Cup to illustrate the principles. In the past, we hope that would be scaled up globally to help us all to improve our situation together. So I'm finishing by saying, I believe that Destined Earth, if we go forward with this, should take a participatory, democratic, value-sensitive approach that is based also on a decentralized approach and informational self-determination. And I would really make a big change and help us to solve the problems that humanity is faced with. So let's do this together. Thank you.